What happens if you ran forever? How long would it take to run around the world? And what would your body look like after running forever? You've probably asked yourself all of these questions when watching Forrest Gump, but now it's time to learn the real answers. So let's get started. In order to answer this question, we need to make some assumptions. First, we need to decide how fast you can run. If we're talking about an average person who doesn't train for long-distance running, then 8 kilometers per hour is a reasonable estimate for your speed. Of course, you can run faster for a short period of time, but we're interested in what would happen if you ran forever. So an average pace is more realistic. This means that you would cover about 43,200 kilometers in one day. Next, we need to know where you're going to run. We'll assume that you're running around the world along its equator. The circumference of the Earth at the equator is approximately 40,075 kilometers. By doing a little bit of math, we find out that it would take you 9 days to run around the world. Of course, this is just a theoretical value, because we all know that UKUNT keep running for that long without stopping. But still, it's interesting to see what our hypothetical runner would look like after such a journey. Let's imagine that our runner decided to start from London. After 9 days of running non-stop, they would end up in Tokyo, Japan. That's pretty cool, right? But let's be honest, no one's gonna run around the world just for fun. So why would someone even attempt something like this? Well, there are different reasons. Maybe they're trying to set a new record, or maybe they just really love running. But whatever the reason, let's assume that our runner made it to Tokyo without any problems. But what happens next? Can they keep running forever? Well, yes, theoretically speaking, they could. However, at some point they would have to deal with jet lag. When you travel across multiple time zones, your body's internal clock gets out of sync with the actual 24-hour day. For example, if you fly from London to Tokyo, which is 9 hours ahead, you will feel like it's only noon when it's actually 9 p.m. in Tokyo. Your body's internal clock will make you feel tired at the wrong times, and it will take a while to adjust to the new schedule. The runner will also have to deal with different daylight hours. In Tokyo, the sun rises earlier and sets later than in London. It will take some time for their body to adapt to these changes. But assuming that our runner is a well-trained athlete, they should be able to overcome these challenges. So let's fast forward and imagine that they kept on running for months or even years. What would their body look like at that point? Well, first off, they would probably lose a lot of weight. After all, running burns a ton of calories. But the runner wouldn't be skinny. They would have a well-developed muscular body due to all the exercise. But here's the catch. Muscle mass also burns more calories than fat mass. So eventually the runner's body would start breaking down muscle tissue for energy. As a result, they would become thinner and thinner until they were almost completely emaciated. But wait, there's more. The constant friction between the runner's feet and the ground would cause blisters, cuts, and abrasions. Eventually, their feet would become so damaged that walking would be impossible. At that point, the runner would have to crawl on their hands and knees, but even that would be painful and exhausting. Sooner or later, the runner would collapse from exhaustion and die. But what if we make our runner immortal? Let's assume that they have a superpower that allows them to regenerate their muscles and skin instantly. In that case, the runner would be able to keep moving indefinitely. But what about food and water? We all know that humans need to eat and drink on a regular basis. If our runner doesn't carry food with them, they will eventually starve. Even if they carry enough food for a few weeks or months, they will eventually run out of it. And if the runner doesn't find any food along the way, they will die of hunger. Let's make our runner immortal in all aspects. Let us assume that they have an infinite supply of food and water, and that they can regenerate their body instantly. Even with all these advantages, our runner would eventually reach a roadblock. Let me explain. You see, the Earth isn't just a flat surface, it's a sphere. And as our runner continues to move in one direction, they will eventually reach the South Pole. From there, they can go in any direction and come back to where they started. So even with all their superpowers, the runner wouldn't be able to run forever. They would be doomed to run in circles around the South Pole for eternity. And here's another interesting fact. There are actually places on Earth where if you run in one direction, you will eventually end up exactly where you started. These places are called turning points. The most famous turning point is located near Damascus, Ohio, USA. If you stand at this point and run or walk in any direction, you will eventually return to your starting position. The area around Damascus contains several other turning points, and there are similar places all over the world. These spots have been known since ancient times. For example, the Greek poet Strabo mentioned them in his book, Geography, which he wrote in the 1st century BC, but scientists only discovered the mathematical principles behind turning points in the mid-20th century. So if our hypothetical runner made it to Damascus, they would have a choice. Turn around and head back or continue running in circles around the turning point. But wait, there's more. There are also places on Earth where if you run in one direction, you will eventually end up in exactly the same place. These places are called self-returning paths. One of the most famous self-returning paths is located near the town of Rugby in England. If you start running along this path, you will never reach your destination. You will always end up back where you started no matter how far you run. Scientists believe that self-returning paths exist all over the world, but they are very rare. Now, let's get back to our runner. What if they decided to ignore these geographical features and just kept on running? Well, in theory, they could do that, but at some point, they would run out of roads. As our runner approaches the South Pole, the terrain becomes more and more barren. Eventually, they would find themselves in Antarctica, a frozen desert where there are no roads at all. The runner would have to navigate through ice sheets and snowdrifts, and it would be very difficult to keep moving. But let's assume that our runner is a superhero. They have superhuman strength and endurance, and they can also control the weather. With their powers, the runner can easily overcome all the obstacles and keep running. But even in that case, they would eventually get bored. After all, the scenery around the South Pole is pretty monotonous. There are no trees, buildings, or people. The runner would be surrounded by endless white plains. At some point, they would start to feel lonely and want to stop. But being a superhero, they would continue running forever. And here's a fun fact. The South Pole is the driest place on Earth. There is almost no precipitation there, so the runner won't have to worry about getting wet. But that also means that there is no grass or plants. The runner will have to stick to a diet of snow and ice, which is very low in calories. But since they have superhuman metabolism, they won't have to worry about getting hungry. Eventually, the runner would reach the geographic center of the Earth. According to some estimates, it would take them about 60 million years to get there. But once they reach the center of the Earth, what will they see? Well, it's impossible to say for sure because no human has ever been to the center of the Earth. But scientists believe that it would be very hot there. The temperature at the core of the Earth reaches about 5,000 degrees Celsius. So if the runner is not a fireproof superhero, they will be burned to ashes long before reaching the center. If the runner is a fireproof superhero, they will be in for a big surprise. At the center of the Earth, the pressure is so high that it squeezes everything into a pancake shape. So our runner will be no exception. They will be flattened into a thin pancake, and then continue running on the inside of the Earth. But after running just a few meters, the pancake runner will be crushed by the enormous pressure and will cease to exist. So even a superhero with all their powers cannot escape the laws of physics and run forever. But don't be sad. You don't need superpowers to have fun. All you need to do is watch some more videos. And don't forget to subscribe.